Of course it's entirely unpredictable, because the better team doesn't necessarily always win. But let's get underway with our second matchup of the day. Spacestation Gaming representing North America, Empire representing Europe. They will do battle. The very first map that we are going to is Kafe.SSG, the Russian team playing on the Russian map.
Yep.
I'm not saying that there's home field advantage, but maybe there is. Empire is going to be starting on attack, Space Station on defense. That means that SSG gets the very first set of bans, and they will remove Thatcher.
Thatcher, a sensible ban here on Kafe. We've talked about how he's not necessarily an essential ban on certain maps, but here, definitely a good one to get out of the way. Nomad, the very same story. Having Nomad in play on Kafe makes rotating very difficult. I have often referred to this specific map, regardless of the matchup, as hell in a cell. And when you can watch those tight flanks with the air jabs, that opens you up to forcing more advantage in the team fights and maintaining your dominance. So, Nomad banned, that is going to make it difficult for the attack in those situations. Well, Mai and Mira, last two bans, nothing surprising there.
This, of course, means that Valkyrie is still available.
Which is particularly important because we are playing on Kafe.
Yes. Almost like I said it for a reason.
I didn't know that you said things for reasons. I thought you just babbled endlessly.
Most of what I do is arbitrary.
Yes.
But
I as well fall into that category. We share the bottom, Parker.
I will say this. I am a bit surprised with the way that the desk framed this particular matchup because, yes, Empire came from the group of death, but they showed some struggles against Invictus.
Yes.
They even showed some struggles against TSM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I think that Empire is a bad team? No, of course not. But Space Station have looked so strong in their respective region. They dominated the North American League at a level that Empire did not do so in the EUL.
Yes.
Group stages are obviously a mixed bag, but in a best-of-3 Space Station on international events, with the exception of SI, obviously, when Canadian had to come back onto the roster for a short period of time, SSG's looked so strong in best-of-3s. I mean, so is Empire, don't get me wrong.
Right. I mean, I was just about to bring it up. Empire's a good best-of-3 team as well. It's where they made their initial legacy when they started making waves, coming out of CIS as one of the newer teams way back in the day. How long ago was that? A year and a half ago? 2 years? It's been a while. Anyway, the point here is both of these teams have very similar stories going into this. I will argue, though, from my perspective, recently I've seen SSG being the team that is carrying the momentum forward. They seem more energized. They seem more enthused. The addition of Hotancold to this roster of Space Station has, I think, revitalized their presence on the server. And that's not just in this tournament, but also in the NAL, as you mentioned earlier. So that momentum is very relevant in a matchup like this, where you see two teams that, you know, on paper are conceivably very close to each other.
Yeah, I don't think this match is going to be a blowout whatsoever.
No, definitely not. We'll probably get to the third map with this one.
I suspect so. Oregon will send us off if that's the case, but Clubhouse is going to be the difference maker here. Such a traditionally strong map for Empire. We'll see exactly how the map pools turn out because this is a point of focus. Best of ones, your map pool is not as important as it is in a best of 3 because your weaknesses are usually well covered. When you only have to play one, you tend to go to a map with an even amount between the two teams. In a best of 3, you're always going to get a weak map.
It's actually part of the reason why the results through the group stages are not necessarily indicative of what we will see here in the playoffs. And that's very important to always keep in the back of your head. And we've already talked a little bit about that. Let's focus in on this round. So we have a reading, I believe, defense here for SSG, and they also have an upstairs roam. Now, North American upstairs roams in this situation tend to fall back really quickly. I'm not seeing that just yet from SSG. If they don't, on the top floor, retreat early, and that is to say, right about now, then that means that they've learned their lessons and they know that they need to hold this firm. It looks like that is the case. C4 is successful. That's why you ban Valkyrie, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice toss there from Hotancold to start things off. Always has been a difference maker for his team. The newest addition to this Empire squad, and with him, the fortunes of the Russian team have continued to increase. So losing Always early. That was one frag grenade as well that is down. And along with all that soft destruction, a Sledge is going to want to stay above reading in Cocktail so that you can cover that particular angle and continue to hold map control in a way that makes it so the defenders can't retake, especially in a post play.
Worth noting here that as soon as that pick came out, SSG fell back immediately. No hesitation. They now have the man advantage that they were fishing for, and further, the time is starting to dwindle here for Empire.
You hear one of the toxic canisters come out, tossed by Bosco. There's still one left, so he's used one earlier on in the round. Those Rotero drones from ShepparD doing the soft destruction work that is absent now with the sledge not in play. JoyStiCK gets a mark with the stun, and ShepparD goes for the plant, but there's nobody. Does anybody know? Rampy, look how close you are. You're going to have to deal with this, but he'll be involved in a bout with Dan and Scyther and JoyStiCK. Everybody getting in on the kills, and even though the first one goes to SSG, that's all they're going to get because it's a lethal execution from Empire to kill every single member of SSG.
So we're going to go back to that roam, Parker, and the fact that SSG retreated after getting the first pick. Conventionally, that makes sense, but you're playing against Empire. And the problem is, as was discussed on the analyst desk by Jesse, if you let Empire set up the way they want to set up, they will win. They will be successful. It doesn't matter how far you put them back. And in that last round, it was only one man down. That is not significant enough to stop the Empire train. So they set up the vertical with only 30 seconds left. That is not a lot of room to work with. They get control over default plant. No one from SSG is anywhere near that plant position. And then vertical control, plant goes down, SSG panic. They walk into those lines that are being covered, and it's a pretty seamless round for Empire.
All told, they had good coverage, and then that upstairs control that we talked about when Always went down and the sledge wasn't able to hold that. While JoyStiCK did a remarkable job of staying up there in conjunction with ShepparD on that Flores. So they've got Dan on the hard breach instead of ShepparD. ShepparD's going to be doing support work and still going for those plants. And the biggest issue for SSG was that they were never able to retake on the top floor. And Rampy, why they're just simply not getting enough intel or not getting any calls from his team, was playing by pillars. He could have rotated into reading to stop the plant, but he was shut down by Dan, who was playing above. Ultimately, Empire had a lock on that top floor, and with it, every team knows how challenging it is to retake reading when you don't have control of the floor above. With that said, well, that round's in the books, and Space Station are going to stay on the second floor, but they're going to go to the mine. Or rather, they're going to go downstairs. Apologies on the silhouettes there. They're going to go downstairs to kitchen.
Yeah, it can be hard to tell on Kafe often. I've made that
these two, this one bomb site in particular looks very similar from the top-down perspective.
Right, and if you're wondering, it's not that we're looking away when the bomb site is first spawned in.
No, I don't. I don't look at the map at all. Actually,
it's that
I cast blindfold.
We do take notes while we do this, and often that's.
I also cast blindfold.
And Parker, he chooses to cast off of sound alone.
Yes.
He's very.
So I'm like a bat.
Yes.
Echolocation.
Exactly. You think that's his hair, but those are actually just really big fuzzy ears.
Yes, bat ears. Correct.
Yes.
So for this SSG roam right now, they're going to hold some of the map on the second floor. It doesn't look like they've got a single body playing up top on the third floor. They have a rotate into laundry if required, with Hotan playing off of that angle. Empire clearing the top floor quite swiftly. They've only burned a minute so far. It looks like half of the team is presently on drones.
Well, this is your typical Empire take. Being very slow, very careful, not assuming anything. And that's one of the things that has made Empire so consistent. But you know what else is consistent? That shotgun. The C4s as well from SSG have been consistently landing. Scyther, though, will get Fultz inside of reading. So as this action starts to simmer down, Empire find themselves one down in terms of players, and SSG, no more roamers.
Well, Fultz dies, but you've lost JoyStiCK and Always. Always not so strong on the entry, not where he needs to be. Gonna leave his team at a small disadvantage now, as that second floor is perfectly in the holds of Empire.
They're going to be able to use this vertical still, though. And look at this Diana clone coming into the freezer. Scyther's going to get a good amount of information from that, knowing where to expect Hotan. Most crucial is, of course, the sledge of Always being gone right now. The vertical is lessened, but luckily there are breaches in the pocket of Dan, so he can do some work.
That vertical play is going to be so critical, as it was in the round previously.
Yep.
That we talked about.
Pro tip with breaches, you can use them just as you're seeing from Dan. On the wall, that will get a good chunk of the floor as well, because the breach on the side that is being breached is much, much more explosive.
I don't know if they just took out a gadget with that Rotero drone or not, but ShepparD will have to get that diffuser down, as he'll go onto a regular drone now that his utility is used up, or at least used up for now, as he can go right back on it with 3 remaining. Space Station right now having a numbers advantage. They trail in terms of the round count, but they've got a nice set on the site. But for whatever reason, Hotancold decides to play aggressively. He'll swing on the Scyther, and Scyther's been great with that gun so far today. Rampy falls, ShepparD's in the site, diffuser going down, but they trade it off. And just like that, ShepparD realizes he's only got Dan to watch. Doing a great job so far, by the way, as Thinkingnade will need to be the hero. He doesn't see it. Dan has been so good through these 2 rounds, and SSG have looked limp on their retakes. Empire's up 2-0.
So this is the problem, Parker, and it's what's often talked about Empire. They are obscenely structured. And to the point where if you're leaving yourself vulnerable like that, like hot and cold just there, you're not going to get a lot of lenience. You're not going to get a lot of opportunity to use your positioning to your advantage. I mean, even Empire's surprised there. I think we saw Always with his hands up going, hey, what is this? What are we, what are we playing against? Because that's the second round in a row, I think, where SSG have been caught out of position. And then because they're panicking, they're like, oh, wait, the plant's going down. The plant spot's been isolated. They start throwing their bodies at it, and Empire is more than ready for that. They've planned for that. That's their whole lives culminating in that point where you think that you can get past the battle lines of Empire without punishment.
This is a ridiculously early timeout.
Very.
Obviously, things not going according to plan, and Lycan wants to settle the team down as quickly as he can. Given that this is Space Station's map, it does not strike me as well that they have already dropped 2 rounds despite having a lead. And there's been some pretty careless mistakes. Hot and cold swinging, whether it for intel or to try and take a fight. When you have a numbers advantage, you don't need to play that active desperation. If you're a team that's staring down a 2v4 and you want to make a brazen play like that to try and even the man count because you know that if you just sit in the site safely, they're going to beat you on a 4v2. Sure, but SSG had the advantage there. There was no reason to forfeit that pick.
The one place where we've seen success so far from SSG is on their roam. Their roams have been good. In fact, both of these defenses, the roam has been good for SSG. They win that equation. Yeah. However, SSG never doubles down on their roam. They either fall back, so they're pulling out halfway, or they die on the roam. Either way, they're not reinvesting into it, so that cannot win you the round, because Empire is still allowed to transfer that into a site setup and an execute. And the thing that we haven't seen from SSG, but could possibly work against Empire, is actually hard covering the plant locations that Empire are trying to isolate. Now, this could be punished by Empire through vertical. It's a very strong chance of that, or through other means, because Empire are good at that. But it hasn't been tried really by SSG. They're giving up those plant positions. That might be a change that they want to usher in.
Well, we'll see what they can change up right now. Going upstairs to the top floor for Space Station. Something at some point needs to change because, well, nothing's really working out for them at this point.
And I know just to be clear, we are talking about this very early on. We're only 2 rounds in, but we've seen a layer of consistency here from Empire and a number of very particular problems for SSG. And since we're in the playoffs, there's going to be a lot left to talk about later on, so we will put our initial thoughts out there.
Yeah, of course. We're not writing either team off just yet. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to write off Empire at the current moment because they're up 2-0 and have looked very strong.
Yep.
But the only major kills that have been coming in, as you talked about, are on the roam. If SSG can hold that down, then that's great. But the thing is that this is not necessarily a roam-heavy site. This is a bunker-heavy site. So one of the greatest strengths of Space Station will be somewhat reduced, given the fact that most players on SSG are all going to be playing tight quarters in and around the bomb site.
So yeah, Rampy is this is pretty much the extent of a roam. Hope you could hear the quotes there on this site. You could do C4s from below, of course, but generally direct confrontation. This is as extended as it gets. The Ionic clone will drop for Scyther, and he'll detect that, yes, indeed, there is a defender inside of the Humidor. He'll fall back, though. It's Rampy playing over by Art now.
There was the castle barricade inside a piano, always on repel. The only one to hold up against this stand, or to withstand the hold from Empire is Hot and Cold. He'll be playing over by Pixel Spot. He's got a long avenue to retreat if he wants to, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to head down white stairs and play at the top. For a moment, a fleeting moment, there was a ping to give his position away, but it was unable to be capitalized on by Empire, as they are very wary of a Valkyrie camera that could be potentially scoping them out. It doesn't appear that there is one inside a piano, though.
They do have some really well-placed ones, as we're seeing here, but one thing I want to highlight is actually the fact that Empire has managed to get Cigar, Piano, and Pixel control without any direct gunfights. That's the first one we'll see, is Thinkingnade attempts to challenge Nubauk, but he will not net any kills off of that.
I think he got the Ionic clone that went out.
Yeah.
From the site.
Probably what it was.
That's about it. He gives his position away at the same time. 50 seconds left, and Scyther's trying to decide if he wants to be able to burn out a grenade with that laser gate in front of him, or whether a Rotero drone will do just that. They're trapped and cut off right now. As SSG still hold over by White Stairs, Rotero drone goes out, and they have to get out of the way lest they take some damage. First confrontation happening with 30 seconds left in the round. JoyStiCK's going to be the one to try to do that. Space Station quadrupled up in the same spot. Hotancold goes down, the very first casualty in this round. With perfect timing left. It'll be traded back with Bosco picking up a big double piece, always equalizing into 3v3. Dan bursts into the middle of the site. Bosco goes down. A pinch coming in as JoyStiCK's been dropped as well. Thinkingnade collecting that one. Still patrolling White Stairs. He sees Dan, but he doesn't want to engage. He's only got 5 seconds left. Playing the clock is most important. Rampy down below, but he doesn't have access to a nitro cell. They know where he is, but nobody's able to stop him, so Dan will do Overwatch. Shuts down Thinkingnade on the re-entry. Dan 6-0 right now. Diffuser goes down. Rampy on the retake takes out Always. Damage done to Dan. Very limited HP as these two will joust with each other. Both exceptionally talented players, either capable of making it work. Rampy trying to poke a fight. Just peeking around the corner now in the back bar store. Dan has an angle, line of sight, and he wins it. Beautiful shot from Dan, who is absolutely unstoppable today. And it's 3-0 for Empire.
Dan is certainly feeling it right there. Actually, he was about 1 or 2 shots for that SMG-11, and I actually got to see on the replay for the final kill cam that those bullets from Rampy did in fact land. There was blood splatter on Dan, but Rampy was already dead at that point. So, man, that is a close one. Could have gone either way, certainly. That initial shotgun blast did force Dan to play a lot more passively. It's the consistency of that shotgun that I referenced earlier. So 3 rounds in a row here for Empire. And here's the thing that's worrisome to me, Parker. Clearly in that last round, SSG said, we need to play safer or more far back or more passive, however you want to put it. And I think based on these last 3 rounds, that is the opposite of what they should be doing, because it has just not been working. And also, now you don't have a tactical timeout to reassess.
Well, the timeout didn't really work out, as you touched upon, and Empire stealing away these 3 rounds on SSG's map. We have seen freak occurrences where the second map, which is Clubhouse, could very easily go in SSG's favor. Teams win each other's maps, and then you hit that reset button and you go to map number 3. I don't know how likely that is right now, as SSG just seems to be playing quite oddly. They're not very strategic, and Empire are taking full advantage of that.
Well, we did talk about how we should expect to see different teams now in the playoffs than what we saw in the group stages. Yes. And by that I mean, of course, they're going to play very differently. So early assessment, yeah, we're seeing a very different SSG. Now, it is a dedicated roam here, as you can see. 3 roamers, 2 in the middle, 1 on the top for SSG, leaving just those 2 anchors downstairs, and one of them, I mean, actually, I don't think either of them are on the site itself. It's kind of a, yeah, kind of a weird, you know, I guess a shell kind of defense, but it works. We've seen this one before. If you control VIP and you could control code check and you've opened that red wall, you still technically have site control.
Want a more roam-friendly site now. We'll see what exactly SSG can do and whether they can muster up the same skills and same success that they've had before. The usual good guns of SSG have not been finding their mark just yet, and you desperately need them to be better at that because Dan alone is clobbering your team, sitting at 7-0. A Nitro Cell could have opened things up there, but JoyStiCK punishes Hotancold on White Stairs, looking over towards Reading. It's a kitchen defense, by the way, so there's still some more work to be done by Empire after they've taken control of that top floor.
Oh boy. Okay, so this time, Parker, the roam does not work out for SSG. You win some, you lose some, I suppose, but they're going to fall back with half the round still available to Empire. And half the round available to Empire, compared to other teams, is kind of like the whole round available to Empire.
Empire have definitely been heating up, and they've impressed during the group stage, though like I said, I mean, you can't really take a ton from the group stage, and it's something that you agreed upon as well. Almost final minute now of round number 4.
Vertical's coming in, hammers down, breaches out, and this is where things start to get tricky for SSG. The question is, how are they going to handle it? Because last time They really didn't have anyone in position to stop the plant. Empire realized that, used the vertical to isolate the plant position, and got a really easy plant off on the B bomb chassis.
Things are about to go down inside a freezer, and a toxic canister, the first of which tossed out by Bosco, awaits whoever drops from Empire. Grenade goes down to dispel some of the gadgetry that's sitting by the door. Fultz getting punished by Always, as JoyStiCK has made his way down to the freezer now. Rampy will be the one to have the coverage and the cross. Inside of the site looks to be the Yana clone. Is that the real one? No, it isn't. It was Scyther on his gadget, so not just us fooled, but them as well. Rampy doesn't have Bosco to support, as all the focus from Empire is over by Freezer, and now they're in. Always with a kill onto Fultz. The numbers will continue to get worse for Space Station. They answer back. Rampy's still in this pivotal position. The toxic canister misses. Bosco has none left. So the Fuser goes down successfully, and the SMG is what Bosco needs to do to take the fight. Punished by ShepparD, as Rampy is now above and finds himself in a tough spot. Dan, call him the janitor because he's been doing an absolute cleanup. It's 4-0 for Empire.
Yeah, Dan is getting an absurd amount of kills at this point in the attacking half of Empire and Kafe. 4-0, Parker. I mean, Empire could drop the ball right now, lose 2 rounds on this half, and still be fine. They've won the attack half, and on Kafe, that's pretty impressive. Now, this is the type of map that does kind of ebb and flow as to what side is favored, but conventionally, typically, historically, it's been the defense. So SSG really struggling here. Last round, we saw the one thing that had been working for SSG stop working. That's the roam. Following that, once again, they did not have any firm control on the plant spot. And you can't really blame them because it's the vertical that's pushing them off that plant spot.
Yes.
So what are you going to do? SSG did present some answers. They put an evil eye deep inside, kitchen. That could see. They opened the wall so it could see over bunker. That's kind of cool. But Empire destroyed that with the Gon sticks. They're still trying to go for the VIP roam, but that's not accomplishing anything, which is odd because normally it's much more successful.
If Empire continue to play like this, well, every other team is unnoticed.
Yeah.
This is vintage Empire. I hate saying that. I hate saying vintage whoever.
OG Empire.
This is vintage Empire.
Peak Empire.
They're playing
the good one.
So well composed.
Yeah.
They're doing similar things. They're winning their gunfights. They never seem to have a blind spot.
Yeah, that's the big one.
And you talked about it during the operator ban phase. Empire banned out the Nomad.
Yep.
So when Empire are on defense, they're not going to need to worry about it too much.
Oh, yeah.
Which obviously on defense, you tend to have more blind spots than you do on attack.
Yeah.
But Empire are able to play around that ban quite successfully. It's honestly, it's incredibly impressive how tough Empire are.
Yeah, and the real tricky thing is we've seen a number of different flank attempts from SSG, and it's kind of odd because Empire aren't having dedicated flank watches, and yet they're always ready for the flank. Like, I've not seen through this entire map, I have not seen one instance where Empire is like failing to hold a flank. They at least get the re, but they almost always just stop the flank dead in its tracks. It's kind of wild. And without a flank watch, just somebody turns around.
Thinkingnade, Hot and Cold have been switching up roles to try and accommodate for whichever site they go on to right now. And well, this is a reading defense, as we talked about before. We're not going to be led astray by the silhouettes, not this time.
Yeah, we did it.
The roam game that we had hyped up for SSG in those first 2 rounds, which did look good, just started to fall by the wayside. An impact goes out by Thinkingnade. Does he get the Selma? He sure does. Another one's going to go. Does he grab the second? Doesn't sound like it, no. So the sound cues give the position away, but only one panel ends up getting opened up.
Yeah, had to throw it low for that to happen, and SSG getting aggressive. They'll get 2. Rampy with a 3rd. There's a little bit of an answer back there from Dan, but he is too far away to save the rest of his team. Now by Pixel, he's going for a direct challenge. Difficult to fight an SAS defender there. Shotgun and the SMG-11. Dan's going to have to finesse that one. ShepparD to assist, and oh, looks like it's a fallback there from Bosco. He gets out of dodge, trying to stay alive for as long as possible and maintain the advantage his team holds.
Dan's going to be in a tough spot here trying to get out of there, obviously maintaining this invincibility streak that he's on. Currently 9-0, an impressive tally. We are 45 seconds left in round number 5, and Dan has yet to die. That is really something remarkable. So they're going to need a big performance out of him, and he's been exceptional in the latter parts of the round, but with 35 seconds left, he and ShepparD are going to need to not just find a couple defenders from SSG, but also get into the bomb site. Seems like an impossibility that you'll be able to kill all 4 of them without getting that objective down. But obviously, when ShepparD goes to plant, Dan will have to fend against the 4 players from Space Station. A near impossible task with the way that SSG has fallen back and are now clustered around the bomb site. Despite all this, they're still giving it their college try. And Dan jumps down, but no, he's finally been finished off. Fultz gets the trophy that he needs, and ShepparD realizes with only 5 seconds left, there's very little he can do. A nice semi-impactless kill, and he's got another for him, but they're not going to give him that very last kill. Despite that, it still gets a little bit too close for comfort for SSG, who finally break their silence and pick up their first round.
1v1 in the dying seconds, and it is the very first, as you mentioned, Parker, for SSG. That does not instill confidence. It went from a 2v4 to a 1v1. I mean, SSG got a little crazy there at the end. They took a lot of risks. I think SSG might just be used to teams that allow those risks to go unwatched, that will be punished by their negligence. But that's not Empire, man. They are not negligent at all, and they've proven that.
It was once again, though, the roam from Space Station that came in so clutch. Space Station obviously read into this because previously their hold upstairs was not as strong as it needed to be at the time. And then we take that top floor, they play aggressively into Empire, and once they got those 2 lead-off kills, they could continue to push into Empire. Because for those that are watching that maybe don't realize this, when somebody dies, you're going to make a call out as to where you died from. When 2 of you die in very quick order, it's very easy for your comms to get absolutely crowded and muddied. So teams will want to take advantage of that. Catch them when they are in absolute disarray. And that's what Space Station did.
Yeah, and it's the first time they've done that, by the way. It's the one problem that they didn't have, or that they, the one thing that they didn't have, I should say, in the previous roams is that they never doubled down. I mentioned that earlier. And finally they do. It's actually the 3rd kill from Rampy as he assists his 2 aggressive players by piano. That's what's kind of put the final nail in the coffin for Empire in that round. And to follow that up, after they get those initial kills and it's a 4v2, SSG gets passive again, and they almost lose it. I mean, it just goes to show, if you have any kind of opportunity against Empire to scale those kills, to win the round, you have to seize upon them.
Final defense, by the way, for Space Station now, as Empire have very firmly been in the driver's seat of this matchup. And it'll be a gamble from Space Station upstairs in Bar Cocktail. So 3 bomb sites played by SSG on their defensive stud. Opting not to go over towards mining and dining. Fair enough, not every team does, though we have seen Space Station play it before.
Not necessary. You can do the other 3 sites as your primary rotation. Now, top floor is tricky here. It's been really bad for SSG because look at this. Empire already in. They've got the control that they want, and there's not a lot of ground to work with for SSG to contend with this take. So they're going to do stuff like that, set up long angles, hope for something to happen, but that's a very difficult shot to hit, even if you're Fultz.
I really do feel like people forget how mechanically gifted Dan is. There's been such a huge amount of talent that's flourished over the last little while that people forget that when Dan was on, Dan was on.
And he's clearly on.
Almost unkillable for, what, 2 straight seasons there. Everybody wanted to talk about JoyStiCK, but Dan was off in the start of the show. And now it's up to ShepparD, but what happens there is Empire just, this is the field upon which they reap, and Dan in particular gets 2 big kills, but that'll be it for him. Fultz is able to exploit the fact that nobody from Empire was looking in that particular direction. The 2 remaining players from Space Station now have quite a tough job on their hands as Hotancold falls back. The rising tides of Empire will continue to crash against the shores of Space Station. 45 seconds for Empire to be able to pull this one off, and a nice shot, but it's not enough as the clone goes down. So does Fultz, and nearly a flawless round will seal the first half, and Empire put a stamp on those 6 rounds by taking 5 of them against SSG.
So credit where credit is due. SSG did determine that they thought that, well, the aggressive plays were the correct answer, and I would agree with that. But it was really wonky, Parker. I mean, they started with a flank up red, mistimed with the rest of the push and cigar. The flank up red does not work out in the slightest. Even given that there's no Nomad in play, that's even worse. The aggressive play in Cigar nets some kills, but because Dan manages to fish 2 picks out of that to begin with, I mean, that's tricky. That's real tricky. So, 5-1. I think that SSG will do better on attack. No,
Watching you try to come up with something positive to say.
No, but I really do think that now that SSG has the freedom to create their own tempo, they will do better. Because SSG was looking stifled, absolutely, suffocated by Empire. And that makes sense because Empire is the type of force that on attack, you really can't contest them in any of the conventional ways. SSG tried aggression. They tried to be passive. They tried all the things that they had in their repertoire. It didn't work. But now SSG gets to set the tempo. They get to make the decisions. It might make a difference. They might get a few more rounds.
Tail of the tape from the first half, by the way. 5 rounds for Empire, 1 for Space Station. Space Station have used their timeout. There is no second timeout available. They don't change when you switch sides. So Space Station are not able to stop the bleeding by taking another timeout. In terms of site rotation, SSG played 3 of the sites, and they didn't go to was mining and dining. In terms of first bloods, split evenly, 3-3. In terms of kills, if you take the top frag on Empire of Dan and the bottom frag of ShepparD, and you add them together, they have the same amount of kills as all of Space Station. There were no successful plants going down, so you didn't really have to worry about that. For Empire, or rather there was 1 successful plant that went down, but other than that, there was no hope in hell of Space Station being able to retake that. And there were a number of times where ShepparD wasn't able to get the plant down despite being halfway through because his team was too adept at killing everybody on Space Station. That's the first half summed up. SSG desperately trying to kickstart some form of comeback here.
No, you didn't. You did not.
And not what?
You did not just say kickstart.
Kickstart. It's all about you.
Yes, it is.
They are trying to kickstart something here. They brought the Lion in. Thinkingnade will be on Hibana as hard breach alongside the Maverick of Rampy. First defense for Empire is upstairs on Bar Cocktail.
Well, nothing's happened yet here for SSG. Nothing very practical. Nothing that's going to make their take that much easier. They're just kind of chipping away at the utility. They haven't cleared out any of the roamers downstairs. JoyStiCK might be able to influence this. He doesn't have a C4, obviously, because he's playing Jaeger. They also still have Dan to deal with at Pixel. That will be a very difficult play to make. I talked about how that SMG-11 shotgun combo on Pixel is very hard to push. That is the truth. So Dan has an advantage in every fight he'll take there, and he has not been losing in general.
Yeah. 12-2 is you want to test your mettle against that? Well, go right ahead.
Have fun.
Well, they've got control of piano on Space Station's side, waiting for someone to swing onto them from that particular angle in Pixel, like you talked about. Scyther might be called in to help out here, but this could be a tough shot. Free fire. Oh, he narrowly misses. The Zofia will engage. Damage being done to him, but Fultz just simply outmuscles him. And a swing as that spot that you talked about. Well, it's no matter for Fultz. An easy job for him and Space Station as they breeze right into that part of the map.
A little bit of hubris there from Empire. The aggressive push on Pixel, completely unnecessary. And it'll net 2 kills for Fultz, who is ready for it. Great diligence for Fultz. And now he continues to hold that white hallway dominantly.
JoyStiCK's the next one, but poor characteristic on his end as he misses his shots. Thinkingade's the first one to die from SSG, but Fultz is just walking in large and in charge. ShepparD takes him down. His reign of terror is over as both kills now sit on ShepparD's shoulder.
Wait a minute.
He's got marks, and he has a nitro cell in hand. It'll go up. Did they dance around it? Yes, it has. Has ShepparD pulled trigger just yet?
What?
No. He manages to take out Hotancold. It goes off, but it's the wrong target prioritization, so SSG is able to get that diffuser planted, and up the stairs ShepparD must descend. Match point awaits Empire if they're successful here, but ShepparD has already wasted about 10 seconds as he miscalculates on red stairs. That's where he's going to go. He has no intel and no idea where they are. He's going to be making a ton of noise as he goes to retake. No Nomad on the board, so he doesn't need to worry about that. But there will be sights trained from Space Station in the direction that he goes, and it's a shot to the thigh that ends up being his undoing. Bosco capitalizes, and Space Station picks up round number 2.
Unquestionably the best round we've seen from SSG thus far, though it is mostly, in my opinion, due to the error in judgment we saw from Empire pushing down Whitehall to Pixel and the lack of a refrag from Dan. We've been talking up Dan all day so far, but look at this right here. He peaks late. I think 3-4 seconds after his teammate dies in the hall. The cover call should have come out way sooner, and he should have had his gun up right as Fultz peaks in the first place. But no, he allows Fultz to change his angle and get centered. That really was a pretty damning situation for Empire, the way it played out. Well done to Fultz, though. Not everyone's going to be successful in that situation. Well done to him. Apart from that, it was pretty routine for SSG. After they got those first 2 picks, now they got serious man advantage. They can just muscle their way into Big Bar. That's exactly what they did.
Well, it's not necessarily a troubling sign for Empire just yet. It's hard to glean exactly what this defensive half is going to look like for them, as we can't really deduce a pattern from a single round. But we are looking at, through the first attack from Space Station, we're looking at an attacker-favored Kafe.
Yeah.
So
we are certainly looking at an attacker-favored Kafe. I don't think it has to do with the map, though. I think it has to do with the nature of the teams.
They've changed up the sites, by the way, with Empire going down to Kitchen. I guess SSG opted for a single hard breacher this time.
Yep.
Thinkingnade, whose woeful performance of 1 and 7, will rely heavily on his utility and not his gunplay through this round. But Rampy doesn't want to deal with that Maverick anymore. Instead, he's brought out the Ying. Other than ADSs, there's nothing to stop that on Empire's side. They don't have Wamai, as he was banned by Empire. There's no Warden on the board either. So if you get Candelaed, blinded, and smoked from the Ying, you might be in significant trouble. You have to hope that those Yokais spend a considerable amount of time around. Scyther will be playing on that Echo. Echo makes his debut here between these two teams.
Echo has been a very quietly relevant operator as of late. He's been getting picked up and played by a lot of defensive teams through the whole tournament. Not to the point where it's so obvious that, oh, Echo's back, he's just as relevant as he used to be. No, not quite like that. But he is a situational pick that has been relevant. And that's under-discussed because there was a time after his nerf, when he lost his invisibility, where he completely lost relevance. Nobody cared about him at all. No one gave him a chance. And now, upon giving him a chance, I think players and teams are realizing how useful he can be, especially for that active droning.
Now, Hotancold didn't see the silhouette of one of the defenders downstairs. A little bit more patience, and maybe he could have picked up a kill when he put that skeleton key away, but he decides that his interest is elsewhere, and this is a lot of destruction as it's forcing the players from Empire to reposition and think differently about where they want to be.
Note that he does that from the 3rd floor. It's caution in 2 things. 1, if you're not sure if you fully cleared out ground floor 2, or if you don't have to flank watch up, and 2, C4s.
He's going to continue to dance around it as he's expended all of that ammunition from the skeleton key, so you best hope that he did a good job of that. Flashes come in, by the way, and one goes off, but the ADS nets the other. JoyStiCK patient, and there go the Candelas as they sprint in, and JoyStiCK, well, you are good and dead. The LMG in the hands of Rampy is just too much for you to do. That opening duel breaking in favor of SSG with a minute to go, but they've still got some work that needs to be done to get to the site.
Yeah, the question is, how are they going to open up that wall? Is there a mute jammer on it? Looks like the Habana's working away with the pellets, and they will detonate. No mute jammer, possibly the vertical got it earlier. Wall open, but there's even a Yokai drone in position to stop that push, and the hole is very small.
Look at this. Nobody from Empire in sight right now. All 4 remaining members playing well off-site, holding map control on the east side of the building. So you have to rely on that Yokai drone to be doing most of the work, get it in, see where they are, and then have it possibly stop them. Depending on where it is, a Yokai drone would be perfect. There's only 20 seconds left, by the way, for Space Station to pull this one off. They break into the site. There goes the Yokai drone. Candelas go off as it's a rave in the back of the site. And oh, missed opportunity as Rampy blinds everyone around him. He doesn't see Always there, and he gets flattened for it. And all of a sudden, Empire has the lead. They try to swing onto the diffuser, but thank goodness for Hotancold above. Thinkingnade 2 picks up his 2nd kill. Dan on the retake. He's got some marks. Lion will stop them but for now, so their positions are given away. Scyther's on 1 HP. This is going to be extremely difficult, especially since Hotancold has not relinquished hold on that top floor. Anybody who walks through the double doors towards the diffuser will be gunned down quite easily. Dan finds the Lion of Bosco. Down he goes, and he's managed to evade the buck above. Continuing to work towards that diffuser slowly but surely. The problem is going to be the time. He's on it, and they know that they're going to try to push it through the main door. He sticks this. Scyther watching. He's getting pushed for it. Down he goes. Hotancold is in, and he'll clutch up huge. That's why SSG picked him up. And despite how close it was, Space Station stitched together 2 rounds.
What a dynamic player in Hotancold. Many other players in that scenario would have remained on vertical and would have subsequently lost the round for their team. Might have gotten 1 player on the cross if he stayed up top. That was funny, by the way. I just have to point that out. He might have gotten 1 more player on the cross had he stayed upstairs, but he would not have been able to see that diffuser since it was planted so deep in Rice, and that rotation from Hotancold couldn't have been.
Timeout is over, so we'll get back into the matchup. And Empire, obviously with how close it got, think that they can solve the issues that were presented in front of them, as it's a second attempt at that kitchen site on the main floor.
Well, kitchen did look a little bit better. I'm really impressed by Fultz, by the way. I forgot to mention this, but Fultz did prone to shoot the yokai drone, which was under the desk in kitchen. That was an essential function because the plant came down with very little time. And if the yokai drone had been allowed to deny the first plant attempt, I think it would have been an Empire round through and through. Because they don't
Any thoughts of a potential dynasty died with NiP's performance in the group stages.
Yeah.
Space Station unable to secure that same level of dominance, but theirs was obviously hindered by a global pandemic. It would have been fascinating to see how SSG would have done after their triumphant SI 2020 run, to see what would have ended up happening past that. But of course, we didn't have a live event for well over a year, so they were just playing against different regional foes, and that was it.
One of the really sad things, actually, about when the pandemic hit is that North America at the time were just starting to become dominant as a region. And then, I'm sorry, international competition? No more of that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put you all on the bench for a while, see how that figures into your meta. And yeah, NA, they really, they devolved a lot as a region. We saw a lot of terrible North American play the last 6 Invitational. But it's been very different for all the North American teams. Like SSG has had different results than DZ, who've had different results than TSM, and so on and so on. You know, just because they're at the upper echelon of NA doesn't mean that necessarily translates the same to international competition. We've seen that through this major. So it is kind of, you know, this is a battle of the titans, so to speak. But, you know, sometimes I do feel, Parker, that when we say a team has not been able to establish a dynasty, we are inadvertently and unavoidably comparing the team to peak G2. Because that was the only, thinking back now, I mean, it was the only true dynasty, that and EG days. But I don't know if that's quite as much that we ever had in Siege.
I mean, I would argue that the only dynasty that we ever had was G2.
Peak G2 Penta?
I don't think the CTM EG days were a dynasty at all.
No, I agree. I completely agree with you. But I'm saying some would make that argument.
Yeah, they'd be wrong.
I would disagree with them.
Yeah, they'd be entirely wrong.
And that's why, you know, that comparison, though, is so extreme. So when we talk about the dynasty of these teams, I mean, these teams are still massive, huge rosters, tons of experience. Just keep in mind the pinch of salt that is, we're comparing them to peak G2.
Obviously, do we think that this particular matchup is the start of a dynasty for either of these teams? No, of course not. But it is good to see Empire back in form.
You know what this is, though? The peak of the vertical play, or the start, the advent of the vertical play for SSG. They're opening up above. They're trying to make something happen here. Empire is on the roam, so the vertical's not actually going to play too much here. They do need to clear out JoyStiCK and Small before they start hitting that site through Bakery. Oh,
he could be contesting right now up against the Capitao of Rampy. I like that Rampy's on this flex pick with his operators, going from Maverick to Ying and now to Capitao. Haven't been able to move JoyStiCK off of this position. Out goes the drone, and he's going to be under fire, but JoyStiCK does not lose those fights. He'll pivot towards the window, and Fultz lets him go by. It's a missed opportunity and a failure to capitalize from SSG. JoyStiCK will be pinned down in his particular position as the Lion encroaches upon him. Crouched around the corner is Fultz. And JoyStiCK is going to wait, but he gets flashed out again. He somehow manages to escape. JoyStiCK is elusive as ever, but a smart play from Hotancold to flush him out of the stairs, and down he goes. Teams hit at a 4v4 with 45 seconds remaining in the round. It's anybody's game.
It was very difficult to get that pick onto JoyStiCK, but they did eventually manage it. Could have happened much easier, much earlier. Fultz in the main lobby is going to be massive for his team as he starts creeping up on the roamer inside of VIP and Whiskey. He gets one for free and almost a second. No, Dan will beat him out. despite having the advantage in that gunfight. Thinkingnade and Bosco left the last two, but there's firm control of Kochek as Scyther goes down by the main door. Dan has been hitting his shots. Through this map, he's been absolutely phenomenal, and he's still up, his gun is still alive. Can Thinkingnade and Bosco handle a half HP Dan? Here come the stuns, the EE1D to make these defenders stand still. Always gets the teammate there, Bosco gets one down. It's Dan and Bosco in the 1v1, but time is of the essence, and SSG just won't be able to make it happen. Empire get their first defensive round in match point.
Ultimately falling victim to the clock, Michael. They just were not fast enough. And Bosco, he tried as best as he could, but oh boy, you come so close. That was such a sneaky play by Fultz, I gotta say, and it very nearly worked out, but it's just Empire were better. And they were repositioned this time. Instead of taking from the front like they had before, Spacestation decided that they wanted to approach from the back of Kitchen. And that's exactly where Empire were set up to deal with them. In the previous round, Empire were holding true towards Freezer, towards VIP, and just waiting. And they had Scyther inside of Kochek as well. So, with that said, SSG, they now find themselves staring down match point. There are still 3 rounds available for SSG to push this to overtime. Things look pretty grim.
Top floor here for Empire. This will be their next attempt. Grim is the right word, Parker. I do think, though, that as previously discussed, Space Station are much more formidable on attack. And I could see more rounds for SSG, especially as we go to the top floor. It has to be conceded that the top floor is one of the more difficult sites to defend lately. And that often when successfully defended, it's almost like it's off of some random chance type deal. You know, like, oh, somebody pushes Pixel wrong and the player at Pixel picks up a 3-piece or something like that and gets aggressive. You know, it's the individual plays, if you will. It's less of the structure, less of the team-oriented stuff. So that means that conventionally the attackers who are allowed to set that tempo usually will be successful here. At least that's what I've been seeing so far.
Yeah, I think we both agree on that point. Operator Roulette for Rampy is still in full swing, but he's reunited with the Ying, who was so crucial when they took Kitchen last time around. Very different bomb site awaits them. This is another one that Empire has not been successful on. Upstairs to Bar Cocktail. Oh. Very swiftly entering the building and with tons of moxie. We already see Fultz in, burning utility and trying to open up the wall, taking out that evil eye that was positioned, or potentially a bulletproof cam if there's one in play that Scyther's put down. JoyStiCK's put one down as well. Be cool if we could see where every single piece of utility was and push one button.
Yeah, that'd be really great, wouldn't it be? Now, this cigar control is huge. Surrogate is going to cost something. SSG has not decided what that thing is yet. They also haven't opened up this top red wall, which makes a retake into Piano very possible. Oh, it's going to be a Skylight take, Parker. That's why. They don't care about Piano. They're going for a direct hit with the Ying.
And that's exactly what a Ying is good for. Paralyze them with the Lion, throw out the Candela so nobody can see you, and then hit the site as quickly as you can and hope that there's nobody from the opponent's team there to greet you. They'll cut off a couple lines of sight with those smokes. Lion goes out. Candela's will as well as Rampy drops in. Fultz leads things off. Thinkingnade wastes no time to get that fuser down. And SSG are just sweeping right through the site. Get out the brooms. But JoyStiCK has some other ideas. He takes out Hotancold. At the current moment, Empire do trail in terms of numbers, and they're still spam pinging away. Scyther, oh, a missed opportunity on the Bosco. He hit back up with Thinkingnade not too far off, and now it falls all on the shoulders of JoyStiCK, who still has some marks, but Rampy pivots, and a war cry echoes from the SSG bench as they manage to stave off defeat in that round.
That right there, Parker, that scream just now from SSG, and I think Rampy in particular, that, you can't really see it there on Fultz's face. Or Hotten's. They're the wrong people to be looking at. But this enthusiasm from SSG is why I think that Space Station is one of the better teams in this tournament, because they're carrying that momentum that they had from NAL. They're carrying the momentum that they have from the pickup of Hotancold, and they just look enthusiastic whenever they get any semblance of a win. And, well, they certainly did in that last round. That was a beautiful take. Not to overanalyze it, but the smoke placement, the Candela placement, 10 out of 10. And the fact that Empire was so far removed from the site, that caused so many problems for them when the plant's going down with the control play. So you've got those Candelas coming out, and there's actually objective play happening. Often, it's one or the other. Not so there for SSG.
So far throughout this bout, 11 rounds, only 2 successful defenses. Well, 10 rounds technically, we're now in the 11th round. But the attackers so far have been playing it picture perfect. It's the first time that Empire is going to go to a bomb site that isn't cocktail or kitchen. They've been unsuccessful on that top floor. SSG, in terms of leadoff kills, are doing a mighty fine job. 6-4 on their entry right now. But despite that, they still trail in terms of round count, which just goes to show you that the overall strategy and the ability for Empire to hang on in the clutch through the mid-round and most importantly, the later portion of the round is so well composed. And that's the patience that we've talked about from Empire many, many times before, is that they commit to something and they do not waver.
It's harder for them to be the ones making the commitment, though, now on defense. And I've brought this point up before when we were discussing SSG, but it's still relevant here for Empire. They now sit on defense. They must address what SSG presents. So that shift is why we're seeing this, well, shift in sway and momentum, if you will. And I'm not sure that it's going to carry forward to the point where we get to OT, but it is very possible. Very possible what? That the shift could carry forward until we get to OT.
Your inflection suggests there was more you were going to say.
No, it's possible we get to OT. I mean, I just don't want to say it because I want to see what happens. I don't want to be the one dictating the script here.
It's a very typical setup on the top floor from Empire. The reinforced panels over on the east side of the building by Cocktail means that they'll be hunkered down with ADSs in front of them. Denial on the wall as well, with no electric claws in the back pocket of Always. They've already been expended. Secondary gadgets, only 1 nitro cell available. Scyther likely pre-placed that, or did he use it to open up a wall, but is puzzlingly absent. SSG have taken some of that top floor control, but nothing really impactful for the rest of the site as they just drop through that red hatch. As for Fultz, he made his way in over by mining, was it? So they're close to the site, but they've still got to hunt through this top floor. If you want to be able to pull off a reading take, you need to ensure that you have Cocktail in your control, and right now it is being held quite heavily by Empire.
The tone for Empire on defense thus far has been much the same on every single round. Standard defensive setup with a lot of passive hold. SSG is taking full advantage of the free territory that they have been given. We've got players prepped on reading door already. We've got the Ying deep in and on 90 ready to pounce and use those Candelas to great effect, as we've seen Rampy do many times before on this half.
SSG looking to continue their trend line of winning more than losing on attack. They need to go perfect here to provoke overtime. They are very close to being able to pull this one off. The Lions and the Candelas go out, and that will signal the start of the execute, but a smoke expertly tossed will stop Rampy from being able to take up much ground. He'll trudge through it anyway, taking a heap of damage. Dan shuts down Thinkingnade. He gets punished for that. ShepparD dropped as Hotancold breaks on in. They've swept their way through reading, but right now Always is better, and JoyStiCK has not been removed from his spot. He looks over to the left, and Bosco is left in a 1v3 to try to hold the line for his team. Empire seem all but certain to put this one away with Bosco on such a sliver of HP. This is a thankless task. He'll trudge in, look to the right, gives himself away, but the time just doesn't work. JoyStiCK holds it down, and SSG's map goes to Empire by a score of 7-4.
Well done there to Empire, locking it out before the comeback could happen. And, well, they certainly looked better on the first half. And in the second half, it almost looked like SSG was going to be